Hey everybody, this is Josh Paul, host of the Small Marketing Teams podcast. I'm really glad that you're checking out the show today. If you're trying to grow your business and you're not a household name or a well-funded startup, you need to do things differently, and that's what we get into on this podcast. If that's you, go ahead and click subscribe on the screen right now so that you'll get notified when we put out new tips, new tutorials, and new advice for small marketing and sales teams. You have a system to do it fairly quickly and not have somebody sit down and type it, in the wee hours of the morning or late at night.
You're listening to the Small Marketing Team Show with Josh Paul, the podcast where you'll learn how to achieve big growth without a big budget.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to session number 10 of the Small Marketing Teams Show, the podcast that marketers, salespeople, and business owners rely on to learn how to do more with less. Each week, I'll guide you through how you can grow your company without the big budgets that we associate with marketing today. Whether you're the only marketer in your company, and you're also the salesperson and the CEO and the person who does payroll, or you have a marketing team big enough to start your own Beatles tribute band, you are in the right place. I'm your host, Josh Paul. Let's get started. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Small Marketing Teams podcast. I'm really glad that you chose to spend your time here with me this week. And I want to kick off this episode by talking about the lost art of going for walks. When you're a small marketing team and you're both in charge of coming up with the message, sometimes coming up with the product strategy that drives the message, and then also responsible for executing the plan to get that message out into the market and generate leads and generate sales from it, that is a lot, and it's pretty taxing on your body, it's taxing on your mind. And one of the things that I found helpful when I was a marketing team of one, I found extremely helpful actually, and that I advise marketers, if you have a team of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, is to make time, schedule time in your week to get away from your computer. You hear that all the time: unwind, turn off, unplug. But this is really important, especially when you need to be both creative and execute tactics perfectly at the same time. And this could be going for a walk, walking the dog every night. It could be taking some time during the day if you work from home, mowing the lawn. I used to come up with some of my best ideas. When I was halfway through mowing the lawn, I'd have to shut off the lawnmower, run inside, and hammer out a blog post because something dawned on me about my industry and about my audience that I thought was very profound and quite relevant. And so I'd hammer out an outline or a blog post or just notes on what I was thinking to get it out of my head and onto paper. It could be that you go for a drive. It could be that you go for a run. But someplace that you're not looking at a computer, you're staring off into the ether, you're staring at something that's further than 18 inches from your face. Because when you're looking at your computer, you are constantly processing, constantly getting inputs, whether it's visual or sound, or the pressure that's inside you to produce, to create, to output. That's another distraction. But when you are going for a walk, go for a 15-minute walk or a half an hour walk or an hour walk every week. Make time for it. You are thinking at your clearest. You can get inside the head of your personas. You can solve that problem. You can map out a month's worth of content. Make sure you have your phone with you so you can jot down notes. A lot of times I'll use voice memos when I'm out on walks because the ideas are so fresh and so crisp that I need to get them out faster than I can type them on my little phone. And if you are the business owner or the CEO or somebody who oversees the marketing team, make sure that you're okay with people taking time out of their day, whether it's working from home one day a week or whether it is just taking off an afternoon or taking a long lunch. I implore you to make it okay in your organization, inside your culture, for people to get away from their computers, especially in marketing. It's not like sales or some other disciplines, maybe support, where you're always responding. Sales has a list they need to call, or they're getting inbound leads that they need to follow up with and come up with a message that's going to resonate with them. Or customer support, where you're responding to support inquiries or support tickets from your customers. Marketing needs to pretty much create fire from nothing. They need to create sparks from thin air, and that is their job. They need to create leads from their own creativity and their own ability to execute a plan and put together that plan in the first place. And to do that, they need to be out of the office. So whether you're a marketer who needs to make sure that this is a disciplined part of their week where they go for a walk, they go for a run, they go for a drive, as long as they can think. And one other power tip that I've found is, as much as you need to catch up on podcasts or like listening to music, leave that at home. Go for this walk once a week without anything playing through your earbuds. And so whether you are a marketer who needs to make time for this every week and be very disciplined about it, or you are the business owner or CEO or another executive that needs to shift gears and make sure that you are okay with people from your marketing team taking time away from their computers and counting that as very important work, or you are the business owner or the CEO or another executive that needs to understand the importance for marketers to get away from their computers to do some of their best work. The dirty little secret is that you can save hours of work each week. It may take you 2 hours sitting in front of your computer to hammer out a mediocre idea, when it could take you a 15-minute walk to come up with a much superior idea and 3 more like it, because you're thinking clearly, you're outside, you're away from your computer, you're in a different mindset. So the big takeaway from the opening of this episode of the Small Marketing Teams podcast is that if you're a marketer who doesn't have a big team and doesn't have a big budget, it's really important that you bring back the lost art of going for walks. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I want to take a few seconds here to thank you for listening to the Small Marketing Teams podcast. It is your business's potential and the questions that you ask and the challenges that you're facing that fuel me and make this a great show. Please take a minute right now or at the end of this session to go over to iTunes and leave this show a rating and a review. By helping out in this way, you're playing a very important role in growing the Small Marketing Teams community. You can go straight to the place where you can leave a review by visiting smallmarketingteams.com/iTunes. Thanks so much for your support. Okay, this week's question is from Mary in Tacoma, Washington. Mary says that she is trying to promote a marketing webinar that she's put together, and she's been trying to do it for a few weeks, but she's not seeing the registrations that she wants. The number of registrants has plateaued at a few dozen, and she wants to increase that. So she wants to know tips for increasing webinar registrations. All right, Mary, thank you for the question. So I'm going to give you the 3 things that I've done, that I've implemented, that have increased webinar registrants for my businesses. The first thing that I would suggest that you do is look at the webinar content and the webinar title. I know that's not what you wanted to hear, but webinars that have abstract titles or are talking about theoretical educational topics don't do as well as webinars that show people specifically how to do something. So make it a step-by-step process. Make it clear that they are going to learn how to achieve a result by the end of that webinar, and you'll see more people register for it because they want an instant outcome. By the end of that webinar, they want to be able to accomplish something that they could not do before. So look at the content, but most importantly, look at the title. Look at the content to make sure that it does fulfill the promise of the title, but the title's the most important piece. So you may take the existing content and reshape it to match the title once you make the title more concrete in terms of what they're going to learn, the reward that they're going to get for putting in the time to join that webinar. Make it a how-to webinar, make it a step-by-step webinar, and based on exactly what your target audience wants to know right now, not something that they could take it or leave it, or they don't need to necessarily know it right now. It's nice to have something to learn at some point. Identify those things that your target audience wants to know. You know that they need to know in the next month, or that they're wrestling with right now, and build a webinar around that. Or take your existing webinar and reshape it and retool the title to line up to show them a step-by-step process for accomplishing that. The second thing that I'd recommend that you do, Mary, is when you are promoting your webinar to your list, you take a different approach than most people take. Most people send HTML designed marketing emails to their list over and over again, these long emails, paragraph, 5 bullets, paragraph, signature. And those, I've found, generate a lot fewer registrants than taking a more personal approach. So here are the 3 emails I send when I have a webinar coming up in, let's say, 2 weeks. I'll send one email with our branded HTML designed email template promoting the webinar. I do that, and that's the typical intro, paragraph, 3 to 5 bullets, call to action, signature email. And I do that for brand recognition and to associate us with the great content that we're putting out. But then the second email that I send is completely stripped down, a text-based email. It looks like it came from Gmail or Outlook, and it's a very short, personal email saying, hey, I thought you'd find this valuable. We're going to talk about X, Y, and Z. And you send this email out to the people who have not registered for your webinar on this list. Through your marketing software, you can segment out who is registered, who is not registered. It says, hey, I want to invite you to our next web training or webinar. That's another tip. Calling it a webinar. Webinars are a dime a dozen. You can call it a web class or web training. I've seen a couple percentage point spikes consistently in registrants when you call it something other than a webinar. But you simply invite them, tell them about the value that they're going to get from the webinar, and simply sign off. I've also found that putting the webinar URL directly in the email, so it is the entire URL is visible, gets a higher conversion rate than linking text in the email. What we're trying to do is eliminate the notion that this is a marketing email. Obviously, it is a marketing email. Obviously, it's sent in a mass fashion to a lot of people, but we want people to, as they're scanning their email, they won't necessarily have time to process that, so they'll just see it as personal email, simple, to the point. There's the link. When was the last time you saw a marketing email that actually included an https://URL in there? So putting the URL, displaying the full URL is actually a trust factor for people who are looking at the email. They see where they're going to be clicking and they say, you know what, a marketing email wouldn't have this in there. So this might be from a person. This might be sent directly to me because they thought this webinar would be valuable to me. So the second email is a stripped down personal note inviting them to the webinar with the URL displaying in there. No graphics, no formatting, no different fonts, no different font sizes. Something that looks like it was sent from Gmail or Outlook from one person to another one individual. The last thing that I would recommend when you're promoting your webinar to your existing list is to use a one-click webinar registration tool, something like lead links in lead pages. I know ClickFunnels has one as well, and there's a few other tools out there that do this. And what this does is you put a special URL in the email, and that URL has some information in it that is populated by your marketing software, like their email address, like their name, and it connects directly to your webinar software. So to register for the webinar, typically somebody has to click on the link, fill out the form, click submit, and then they're registered for the webinar. In this case, they simply click the link, it goes to the webinar registration page, and they're automatically registered because all of that information is being conveyed to your webinar system, your webinar registration system, behind the scenes, and they're instantly registered for that. I see a big 20% increase in registrants when I'm promoting a webinar to my list when I use an instant one-click registration system for webinars. So the first email is the branded full marketing email with the call to action to register for the webinar. The second email is the personal note, stripped down format. Looks like it came from an actual person. And the third email is the day before the webinar. I'll send them a quick note in the stripped down plain text email format that says, "Hey Jim, I just wanted to see if you were going to join our webinar tomorrow." Or, "Hey Jim, I just wanted to see if you were going to join our webinar tomorrow on increasing sales in 2017. Print the URL, link the URL, but display the full URL. Hope to see you on the webinar, Josh." Very simple, 1 line, 2 lines max, and it's something that's very digestible on a mobile device. And I get about 50% of my registrants the day before the webinar from that simple email. People don't need the marketing fluff. If you have a relationship with them, if they're on your list and you've already established a rapport and trust with them for producing highly valuable content, they'll just going to see your name. And that is the number one factor. If you go back to an earlier podcast episode, the sender is the number one factor in getting people to open and click through on your emails. But if they see your name and they know that you produce great content, they'll check out the title of the webinar and they will click register. They will click that URL. They'll register for your webinar. So Mary, there you have it. Those are the 3 things that I've done that I would recommend that you try to increase webinar registrants. So that is, first look at the title and the subject of the webinar and make sure it is very concrete in terms of the value that they're going to get and the outcomes that they're going to be able to accomplish once they attend your webinar. Make it a very clear how-to or step-by-step webinar. Stay away from the high-level theory. Next, implement that 3-email personal cadence where it starts with the branded email and then the personal note and then the quick email at the end, the quick 1 line, "Hey, I thought you'd find this valuable." Or I actually get a lot of responses when people, when I send that last email, it says, "Hey, just wanted to see if you were going to be able to make our webinar tomorrow. Just wanted to see if you were going to be able to join us on our webinar tomorrow." I get a few dozen responses. People go, "Oh, sorry this time. Thanks for thinking of me. I wish I could make it. I'm going to be out of town." Or, "Thanks. I'll definitely sign up right now." But people really like that personal tone and that quick, don't waste your time with marketing copy approach. And then the third thing is find a one-click registration tool, hook it up to your marketing system, hook it up to your webinar system. That way you save people the extra step of having to click on the URL in your email. Go to a landing page, understand that landing page, fill out the form, click submit, and then they're registered. It's a one-click registration. They click on the link in your email and they're instantly registered for the webinar, and you can start sending them additional communication from there. All right, there you have it. Mary, I think those 3 things are going to make a big difference in doubling, tripling, quadrupling your webinar registrants. I know it did for me. Let me know how it goes in the Small Marketing Teams Facebook group or at Small Marketing Teams on Twitter. Mary, good luck. All right, I have a very special segment for the listeners of the Small Marketing Teams show today. As you know, if you've been listening to this podcast for several months, that content is the basis for leveraging a small marketing team and limited marketing resources to get found, convert website visitors into leads, and then turn those leads into customers. Content and sharing what you know, educating your market, spreading your message is the key. That's the new way of doing things and how to leverage a small budget and a small team to grow your business. So today we booked a very special guest, and we're going to do an interview with him on how to create one of the most powerful content assets without spending a year creating it, without spending your entire marketing budget creating it. So I'd like to welcome right now to the Small Marketing Teams show Nick Raithel. Nick is the creator of the 7-Hour Book. This is a proven system that allows executives and entrepreneurs and business owners to get their own professionally published book while spending only 7 hours of their time on it. Nick, welcome to the Small Marketing Team show.
Thank you very much, Josh. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's get right into it. Why a book? Why should, rather than writing a blog, starting a podcast, they're all really viable options, but why is having a book important when you want to establish yourself as a leader?
It comes down to, on a basic level, the size of the book and what a book stands for vis-a-vis a blog post or any of the other forms of content that you've mentioned that really are out there that businesses often employ. A book gives you a sense of authority that the other mediums just don't have, especially today at a time in which blog posts can be churned out very quickly, in which videos, these are the days of Vine, for example, very short videos. A book gives you just a level of depth and credibility in the eyes of your market that those other mediums don't have. So that would really be, on a basic level, why a book.
I think that's really important. And if you see somebody, or they're running an ad, or you meet them at a conference, and you say, "So what do you do?" Say, "Well, I'm I own this business, and I'm also an author on this topic." It just changes that person in your eyes once you realize somebody put in the time to create a book. And the dirty little secret is you have a system of helping people do that, where while somebody might think they put a year or 6 months into creating a book, you have a system to do it fairly quickly and not have somebody sit down and type it in the wee hours of the morning or late at night.
Yeah, we do. And the thing is that you mentioned it being, in some cases for other people who are doing it, a year long or wee hours of the morning. And people think it has to be like that. But the real truth, is that it doesn't have to. If you're doing it that way, often, not always, but often, you're doing it the hard way. If you really stop and think about it, and think about what a book is and how they're usually created, whether through a system such as ours or just even doing it yourself, there are faster ways, there are easier ways, and there are more efficient ways to get it out and to get it put together. And I'm fortunate on our end that we can help people do it through one of the most efficient ways.
So I think we're starting out with two big takeaways for business owners or people who run small marketing teams, and that is, one, a book is important. A book will give you so much more mileage than other content assets. And the second is, creating a book is more attainable if you follow the right process than ever before. What do you think?
On that, I think that's very fair, and I would add that on that first point about the book being just an instant credibility builder, I would also add that it's two things really for your audience to think about and to kind of conceive of it as. Two catchphrases, if you will, for it. First, a book really is a business card that people do not throw away. And what I mean by that is, Josh, in your case, when was the last time you threw a book out?
Absolutely. I have boxes and boxes that I've moved from house to house that I may not ever get to reading, but I won't throw them away.
And that's just what a book does. You don't throw it away. It's case in point. I think anyone listening to this probably feels or is in much the same position. You get these books, somebody gives you a book, or you buy it, and you just feel like you can't throw it out. So if you think about then the fact that books really have become the new equivalent to a business card, the new means of conveying your authority and your position, then a book really is going to be something that, once you give it to someone, stands for you, carries your image, and they don't throw it out. So that would be one of the ones. The other thing, and the other real reason why that first point that you've mentioned, which is a book being so important, what really drives that home is the fact that books give you what I like to term, and actually what we almost called our company, they give you a thud factor. And what I mean by thud factor is when you walk into your prospect's office or you walk into a client's office and you have that book, that physical book, and you put it on their desk or put it in front of them, it literally, with the sound, thuds on their desk or on their table. You can't replace that with a blog post. Blog posts may beep when they sound on your phone if you're getting a feed, but they don't make the same impact, literally, that a book does with that factor.
I agree. So what are some of the tangible benefits? So let's bring the rubber down to the road. What are some of the ways that your clients have used books to grow their business? I've seen people use it for lead generation pretty effectively. What else have you seen?
Well, I think it's very important to start with that first one. You said lead generation, lead gen, especially for anyone listening to this who is owning a business, looking to take their business to the next level. A book can be a very, very powerful form of lead gen. If you have it out there, for example, as an ebook, or if you're giving away physical copies that people order through your website, and then the book is free, but they pay for shipping, or you pay for shipping.
I love that model right
there. Yeah, it's really a fantastic one. I know one of the online guys, do you know who it was offhand, Josh? Many of them now, but one of them first did it.
Russell Brunson,
and he kind of inspired everyone else.
Maybe.
Yeah, that
he's crushing it right now with his .com Secrets book.
Yeah, well, Russell actually, we're talking about books. Russell, I've heard, even takes it a step further, where he will actually send you an MP3, an actual MP3 player, full of his podcast episodes on it.
Yep,
if you subscribe to his list.
Exactly, that's his latest offer. And I've seen people use books to get more speaking gigs in their industry. Get invited to certain conferences and certain meetings. The authority that it gives you, so not just lead generation, but the authority that it gives you in one-on-one situations, but to speak to the masses is tremendous.
You know, it really is, and speaking gigs in particular are one of the incredible benefits of this, because having this out there causes opportunities to come to you that you might never have even thought of, with speaking engagements being one such example. You might get an invitation to speak somewhere and you've never heard of the organization. You've never heard of this conference. It's not saying it's a bad one. If anything, it might be a great conference. But you would never have even thought that you could get this opportunity, yet having a book out there causes it to come to you. It's almost like with a book, maybe another way to think about it is it's this boomerang. You throw it out there, it circles around, dodges through different obstacles, comes back, and you don't really know what it's going to bring back to you. But more often than not, it brings back something pretty good, something you're pretty pleased with when you see it.
So I think we've made a strong case for the importance of creating a book. Let's talk about the different options people have for getting a book done. Because some people are thinking right now, yeah, a book sounds great. I've thought about it in the past, but is it really doable? I'm strapped for time as it is. What are the different options available?
The very first option is to think and to reflect. Do you even need a book? Now, we've just talked about the merits of the book, but at the very minimum, before you even think about any of the other things that we're going to get to, which are the steps and the ways you might do it, to even think and determine if you need it. I mean, Josh, I'll be honest with you. One of the clients who I talked with recently, he ended up ultimately just needing a Facebook ads campaign. I mean, he thought he needed a book, but when we really got down to the business and, as you said, when the rubber met the road, so to speak, it turned out that he could do everything he wanted with the Facebook ads campaign, which we were happy to help him a little bit with.
I'm glad you started with that point. It's not all book all the time. It is the right option and a great option for a lot of people, but there are certain people where it's not the right time or it's not the right option for their business model or where their business is in its life cycle.
Yeah, it's so true. And it comes down as well to not only understanding if you need one, but understanding what your why is. As cliche as that may sound, as trite as that may sound, knowing what your why is. You know, why are you doing this in the first place? Are you going after, as we talked about, lead gen? Do you want to get invited to conferences? So understanding what the why you're doing this. Now, after that, if then you want a book, then there are certainly a number of roads to get there.
And so you're going to tell me that people need to start getting up at 4 a.m., sitting, open up their laptop in the dark and start typing away for 9 months straight. So commit 2 hours a day for 9 months and they should have a first draft by the end of that. Is that how most people think about it?
Well, I think you left out a step, and the step in what you just described was change your name legally to Stephen King or John Grisham or someone else, because I think that's how they write books, but not the rest of us.
So what are some options? I know there's many options, and depending on who you are, the right one will come to you. So if you're not going to sit down and be a professional author or ignore your family for 6 to 9 months, what are some other options available to people today?
Well, one of the options would be to outsource it somehow. If you don't want to write it yourself and you do want to get a hand with it, to outsource it. Now, there are book coaching services which are okay in the sense that they'll give you some guidance and help you kind of get started a little bit. But in most of those cases, it really is just hand-holding in the sense that you're doing it, but maybe you have a buddy to talk to.
And that's the right option
so that
for
would
some
be,
people.
It is. There are certainly some people who just kind of need a little bit of a kick, and then they're off to the races. Another of the options would be to go a little bit more in and maybe have someone just do the whole thing for you with back and forth emails, going over maybe a 6-month or a 9-month stretch, many phone calls, tons of correspondence, you personally having to essentially do everything but actually put paper to pen, or pen to paper rather, and that would be more of a traditional ghostwriting service, with the major downside of that also being that not only are you very involved, but you're not getting it created by a marketing team or marketing people who are knowledgeable in how to make it work for you and your marketing goals. So if you want something that sounds pretty, something that sounds cute, maybe makes people laugh, that might be the way to do it. If you're just going for sort of a lighthearted thing, that would be another way to do it. And that would probably mean ghostwriting in that sense, in the traditional sense, would be right for you.
Okay. So we've talked about writing yourself. We've talked about coaching. We've talked about ghostwriting, where somebody's doing the entire thing for you. But I think there's some more viable systems for small marketing teams, because ghostwriting services can also be very expensive. But so what are some of the newer ways that entrepreneurs are having their book created?
Well, the way we do, I can't speak for all of the newer ways out there, but the best way I know of, which is what we do, is a process called the 7-hour book. What that is a system that allows you in just 7 hours of your time. So to the business owner listening to this, to the entrepreneur listening to this, to the sales team leader listening to this, it only requires 7 total hours of your time, none of the back and forth, months on end of a traditional ghostwriting service. And with the 7 hours that you spend of your time, you get your own professionally published book, and we on our end are spending a whole lot more than 7 hours, but all that's required of you is just 7 hours talking to us over Skype. And that gives you a fully professionally published book with all the benefits of it too. That would be our system.
So I think it's really important to not only understand the system, but why you designed this process the way you did. Why 7 hours, and why did you decide not to create a ghostwriting service? Why is this better for business leaders?
Sure. In terms of why is this a better choice for most business owners than a ghostwriting service, is our emphasis on results. A ghostwriting service, oftentimes, I can't speak for all of them, but oftentimes is staffed and is looked at from the eyes of English majors, people who have never run a business, people with no knowledge, no tangible knowledge of marketing or business principles. So their goal is to make something that's funny. Their goal is to make something that's lighthearted. But that's only what they're thinking of. They're also, and you'll hear this time and again from traditional ghostwriting services, is that they're obsessed with the phrase New York Times bestseller, New York Times bestselling. It's like waving bread in front of a bull, basically. They get excited when, to you, the business owner, to you, the entrepreneur, on a small marketing team, you could care less about a best-selling book. What you want is results. What you want is leads from this. What you want is the phone to ring, people to subscribe to your email list. That's what you want. You could care less about something hitting the charts. And frankly, for most of the people listening to this, if not everyone, you don't want the broadest possible slice that's required in order to have anything near a, quote, New York Times bestseller. Because the books that top the New York Times bestseller list often have the broadest audiences. You're probably, depending on your business, concentrated on a very niche group, where if you have a very refined message for this group, you're going to hit it out of the park. But if you go too broad, you're not going to produce nearly the same results. So you want it to be niche.
No, you're right. The riches are in the niches. That sounds fun, but it's even more fun because it's true. I think you make a really good point about not all book creators and writers are the same. They're not all created equal, especially when you're talking about creative writing versus business writing and writing a book to get results. You need a very specific approach and very specific set of people and resources who understand why you're creating this book. So what are some, 2 or 3 pitfalls that people run into in the book creation process? Where do they get stuck, and what advice do you have for helping them get over that?
One of the biggest pitfalls that we see most often is people who don't think that they have a good idea or don't think that they can come up with an idea. We call this the idea pitfall or the idea fallacy. It's such a shame to see it too, because you don't need, and let me be clear on this, really, you don't need an original idea. You don't need anything that's groundbreaking, anything that's never been done before. You can get started with very basic ideas. You can get started putting your own spin, your own slant on an existing concept, not plagiarizing, but putting your own unique take on it or your own alteration on it. You can get started where you are. You don't need to be sitting under a tree and have a revelation on what to do the book about. You can get started today.
I think I see that, and when I talk to people, that's the number one thing that's holding people back. They don't think that they have something groundbreaking and enough to warrant putting it out there. I see it for all different content types, but especially something as significant as a book. Or is there another area where people get stuck?
I think another area might be in not committing to it. What I mean by that is one day they think they want to do a book, then the next day they're like, maybe we should run Facebook ads. Then the next day after that, maybe we should be on YouTube. It's not really getting clear on what it is that you want in terms of content. And this comes back to, Josh, what we were saying earlier about, do you even need a book? You need to just think about your organization and determine what you need, and then based on that, and based on your needs, then get clear on what you want. Once you know what you actually need, per se, what do you want? Get clear on that. So then you're able to commit to something like a book. Or if YouTube's your thing, you're able to commit consistently to doing a YouTube channel. Or if podcasting's your thing, you can consistently commit to putting out episode after episode after episode. But get clear on that at the beginning.
That's a really good point that I wasn't even going to raise, but consistency, when you're talking about creating meaningful content for your industry, consistency is the key, and having a certain level of commitment creates that consistency. So on that note, Nick, I think we've dropped a lot of value for business owners, for small marketing teams, on how to create something that is proven to grow businesses such as a book, and do it without a big budget, without a big team, using the right system designed to get results. And so I want to thank you for joining me today. And before we go, is there any last bit of knowledge? What is the one takeaway that you want people to come away from this experience today with?
I think if there is one thing to come away with, it's the idea that anyone can be an author. Absolutely anyone. You do not need to be Napoleon Hill. You don't need to be Tim Ferriss. You don't need to be John Grisham. Anyone can be an author. If you commit to it and you know why you want a book and you're prepared to do it, then you can be an author and you can have all of the benefits of a book.
Nick Raithel, creator of the 7-Hour Book. And Nick, where can people find you online if they want to reach out to you and ask you more?
People can talk to us visiting our website at contentcore.net, and that is spelled CONTENTCORPS.net.
Great. Well, that does it for us today, ladies and gentlemen. If you like this kind of information, this tactical information for people without big budgets and without big marketing teams, subscribe to the Small Marketing Teams podcast on iTunes, and please leave a 5-star review while you're there. You can also get updates about the latest episodes by subscribing to the podcast notifications at smallmarketingteams.com. So stay tuned for some great upcoming episodes. I want to give a big thank you for Nick Raithel for joining us today, and thanks for downloading.